I trusted her with my life. For 3 years, Maria came every morning, helped me take my medicine, cooked my meals, and smiled like family. But last Tuesday, my 14-year-old grandson showed me a video on his phone that made my blood freeze. He had been recording her for weeks, and what she was doing behind my back involved forged checks, a secret bank account, and a plan to have me declared mentally unfit. If you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you, stay with me. Like and subscribe and tell me, where are you watching from tonight, and what time is it there? My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 72 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I was a good judge of character. I lived in a quiet colonial house on Willow Creek Drive in Hartford, Connecticut. It was the home my husband Robert and I bought in 1985, back when mortgage rates were high and hope was cheap. The house was made of red brick with white shutters that needed painting every few years. Robert always promised he would do it himself, but he never quite got around to it. He said the peeling paint gave the house character. He said imperfections were proof that something was lived in. I look at those shutters now, and I see how much I let slide while I was busy being trusting. I see how much I ignored because I wanted to believe the world was kind. Robert passed 5 years ago from lung cancer, leaving me with this house, a modest pension, and a savings account we had built carefully over 40 years. We were not wealthy people, but we were secure. Robert used to say security is not about having millions. It is about knowing where every penny sleeps at night. I held on to that saying like a lifeline after he died. Because grief makes you vulnerable. It makes you want to believe anyone who offers kindness. When he died, the silence in the house was so loud it felt like a physical weight. I would walk into the kitchen and see his coffee mug on the counter. It had a chip in the rim from when he dropped it in 1998. I could not bring myself to wash it. I could not bring myself to move it. It sat there like a monument to a life that had stopped too soon. For the first year, I managed alone. I paid the bills at the kitchen table where we used to eat breakfast. I drove my old Buick to the grocery store on Main Street. I waved to the neighbors who brought me casseroles in the beginning. But casseroles run out, and visits become less frequent. People have their own lives. They have their own problems. They cannot sit with you in the silence forever. I started forgetting things. Not important things. I forgot where I put my reading glasses. I forgot to water the hydrangeas until they drooped. I forgot the date of my nephew's birthday. These were small things, but they were enough to make me feel like I was slipping. They were enough to make me doubt my own mind. And that doubt is where the crack began. That small, unanswered question is where the truth begins. My son David lived in the city. He worked in finance downtown, in a tall glass building that reflected the sky. He was busy. He was always busy. He called me on Sundays like clockwork. He asked if I needed anything. He asked if the house was too much for me. I always said I was fine. I did not want to be a burden. I did not want to be the mother who needed saving. But David kept pushing. He said, "Mum, you are getting older. You need to think about the future." He said it kindly. He said it like he cared. But something about the way he said those words made my chest tighten. It sounded less like concern and more like preparation. Like he was preparing for something I did not know about. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself he was just a good son worrying about his mother. I wanted to believe that so badly, because the alternative was too painful to consider. I remember the day I decided I needed help. It was a Tuesday in late October. The leaves were turning brown and falling onto the driveway. I was trying to open a jar of pickles. My hands used to be strong. I used to carry grocery bags without thinking. But that day, the lid would not budge. I twisted and twisted until my knuckles turned white. I sat down at the table and cried. I cried because I could not open a jar. I cried because Robert was not there to open it for me. I cried because I was alone. That was the moment I called David. I told him I was ready to listen. I told him maybe he was right. He said, "Do not worry, Mum. I have someone in mind. She comes highly recommended." He said it so quickly, like he already had the name on the tip of his tongue, like he had been waiting for me to say yes. That small detail did not seem important at the time. It would later change everything. David sent me a profile the next day. Her name was Maria. She was 45 years old. She had a round face and kind eyes in the photograph. She wore pastel scrubs that looked soft and clean. The agency said she had 10 years of experience. They said she specialized in elder care. They said she was patient and gentle. I looked at the photo and I hoped. I hoped she would be nice. I hoped she would not make me feel like a child. I hoped she would let me keep my dignity. I did not know then that dignity is the first thing they take. I did not know then that kindness can be a costume. And Maria was an award-winning actress. I signed the papers. I agreed to the trial period. I opened the door to my life and let her walk in. I thought I was inviting help. I was inviting a wolf into the sheepfold. But I did not know that yet. I just saw the smile, and I trusted it. Maria arrived 6 months after Robert's funeral. My son David insisted I needed help. He said, "Mom, you are forgetting things. You left the stove on last week." I had not left the stove on, but I was tired, and David was persistent. He worked in finance downtown and barely had time to call, yet he found time to interview caregivers for me. Maria was recommended by an agency David trusted. She was 45, soft-spoken, and wore pastel scrubs that always smelled of lavender. On the first day, she brought me a loaf of banana bread she had baked herself. She held my hand and said, "Eleanor, you are safe with me. I will take care of everything." That small detail did not seem important at the time. It would later change everything. She walked into the kitchen and put the bread on the counter. The smell of bananas and cinnamon filled the air. It smelled like home. It smelled like safety. She unpacked her bag and put her things in the drawer I showed her. She moved with purpose. She moved like she owned the place. I watched her from the table. I watched the way she touched things. She did not hesitate. She picked up Robert's mail and sorted it without asking. She picked up my pill organizer and checked the dates. She said, "You have a lot of prescriptions, Eleanor. We need to be careful." She said it with a frown, like I was a child who might make a mistake. I nodded. I did not argue. I was too grateful for the company. I was too lonely to set boundaries. David visited less often after she started. He would come on Sundays for an hour. He would sit in the living room and talk to Maria more than he talked to me. He asked her how I was doing. He asked her if I was eating well. He asked her if I was confused. I sat there listening to them talk about me like I was not in the room, like I was a project they were managing. Maria would smile and say she is doing wonderful. She is very strong. But she needs supervision. She needs someone to watch the details. David would nod. He would look at me with pity. He said, "See, Mum, I told you it would be better. You can relax now." He said it like relaxation was the goal, like my only job was to sit still and wait for the end. I felt something inside my chest grow very quiet. I felt myself shrinking. For the first year, Maria was perfect. She managed my pills. She drove me to grocery stores. She even helped me organize Robert's old tools in the garage. I felt a sense of relief I had not known I needed. David visited less often, seemingly satisfied that I was in good hands. He would call on Sundays and ask if Maria was treating me well. I always said yes. Why would I say no? She brought me tea exactly how I liked it. She remembered my mother's birthday. She listened to stories about Robert without checking her watch. But looking back, I realize now that kindness can be a costume. And Maria was an award-winning actress. She learned what I liked. She learned what I feared. She learned what I missed. And she used all of it to build a wall around me. She started telling me who to talk to. She said Mrs. Higgins next door asks too many questions. She said you do not need to worry about the neighbours. She said your friends from the church group are too loud. They tire you out. Slowly, I stopped answering the phone. Slowly, I stopped opening the door when the bell rang. I let Maria answer. I let Maria filter the world. She told me what people said. She told me what people wanted. She became the gatekeeper. And I did not see the bars being put on the windows. I thought she was protecting me. I thought she was keeping the noise away. But she was keeping the witnesses away. She was making sure no one saw what was happening inside. That small glance did not escape my notice. I saw her watch the driveway when the mailman came. I saw her stand between me and the phone. But I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself she was just doing her job. The first crack appeared in the second year. I noticed a letter from the bank had gone missing. I usually kept my statements in a blue folder on the desk in the study. One Tuesday, the folder was empty. When I asked Maria, she smiled that calm, practiced smile and said I moved them for safekeeping. The mailman has been so careless lately. I accepted this. I wanted to accept it, because the alternative was too painful to consider. But something about the way she said those words made my chest tighten. It was too smooth, too rehearsed. I started watching her hands when she spoke. They never shook. They never fidgeted. They were steady as stone. I went to the study to look for the folder. The desk was made of oak. Robert had built it himself. There was a scratch on the left side from when he dropped a hammer. I ran my hand over the scratch. It felt rough under my fingers. The drawer was locked. I kept the key in my pocket. I took it out and unlocked the drawer. The blue folder was not there. I looked through the other papers. There were receipts for groceries. There were bills for the electricity. But there were no bank statements. Not for 3 months. I called the bank. I asked them to send me copies. The woman on the phone said they had been mailed to the address on file. She said they were sent on the 1st of every month. I hung up the phone. My heart was beating fast. I looked at the trash can in the corner. It was empty. Maria had taken the trash out that morning. She had taken the evidence with her. I confronted her at lunch. We were eating soup. She had made tomato soup with crackers. It was my favourite. She sat across from me. She looked at me with those kind eyes. I said, "Maria, where are my bank statements?" She put her spoon down. She wiped her mouth with a napkin. She said, "I told you, Eleanor. I moved them. You do not need to worry about numbers. It stresses you out. Let me handle it." She said it so gently, like she was doing me a favour, like I was too stupid to understand money. I felt a flash of anger. It was hot and sudden. I said, "I want to see them." She shook her head. She said, "David said it is better this way. Your son wants you to be happy. He does not want you stressed." She used David's name like a shield. She used my son's love against me. I looked at her. I saw the lie in her eyes, but I did not fight. I was too tired. I just nodded. I ate my soup, but I did not forget. Then my grandson Leo moved in. David was going through a divorce and could not manage Leo alone during the summer. Leo was 14, quiet, and spent most of his time in his room with his laptop. He was the kind of boy who noticed things adults missed. He noticed when the Wi-Fi password changed without telling him. He noticed when Maria locked the study door, even though she knew I kept the key in my pocket. One evening at dinner, Leo looked at me and said, "Grandma, why does Maria have a key to your safe?" I froze. I did not have a safe. Or at least, I did not think I did. Robert had installed a small wall safe behind a painting in the study years ago. I had forgotten it existed. Leo had come to stay in June. The school year had just ended. David said he needed to focus on his work. He said the house was too chaotic. He said, "You have space, Mum. It will be good for Leo. It will be good for you." I agreed. I missed having a child in the house. Michael had been gone for so long. Leo was quiet. He wore hoodies even in the summer. He kept to himself. But he watched. He watched everything. He sat on the stairs sometimes and just listened. He did not say much, but when he spoke, I listened. He had Robert's eyes. He had Robert's careful way of looking at things. He did not trust easily, and he did not trust Maria. The first week Leo was here, he asked me about the Wi-Fi. He said, "Grandma, the password changed." I said I did not change it. He said Maria did. I asked him how he knew. He said I tried to log in and it failed. Then it worked again. But the name of the network changed. He said it is weird. I said maybe she thought it was too complicated. He shrugged. He did not push it. But I saw him watching her. He watched when she went into the study. He watched when she used the computer. He did not say anything to me. He just stored it away, like a squirrel storing nuts for winter. He was preparing. He was waiting for something. I did not know what he was waiting for, but I was glad he was there. I felt less alone. I felt like someone else was watching the door. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen making tea. Leo came in. He looked around to make sure Maria was not there. She was in the garden pruning the roses. He closed the door softly. He said, "Grandma, do you have a safe?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I saw her put something in the wall, behind the painting of the lighthouse." I felt my stomach drop. The lighthouse painting was Robert's favourite. He painted it himself. It hung in the study. I never moved it. I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "I saw her use a key. She thought I was asleep. I was playing games in the hallway. I heard the click." I said, "Why did you not tell me before?" He said, "I wanted to be sure. I did not want to scare you." He looked at me with serious eyes. He was only 14, but he looked older. He looked like he was carrying a secret too heavy for him. I told Leo I did not know what he was talking about. He shrugged and said, "I saw her put something in there. She thinks I am asleep." That small glance did not escape my notice. Leo was not accusing Maria of theft. He was just stating a fact, that the implication hung in the air like smoke. That night, I went into the study after Maria had left. I moved the painting of the lighthouse Robert loved. The safe was there. The dial was slightly turned from the position I remembered. I did not open it. I was too afraid of what I might find. Instead, I called David. He did not answer. He rarely answered anymore. His voicemail said he was in a meeting. I left a message saying I needed to talk about the bank statements. He never called back. The study was cold that night. The window was open a crack. The curtain blew in the wind. I stood in front of the safe. My hand hovered over the dial. I wanted to turn it. I wanted to know. But I was afraid. If I opened it and something was missing, I would have to face it. If I left it closed, I could pretend. I could pretend everything was fine. I could pretend Maria was just helping. I put the painting back. I smoothed the frame. I made sure it was straight. Robert liked things straight. I walked out of the room. I turned off the light. I stood in the hallway. I heard a noise downstairs. It was the fridge humming. Or maybe it was a footstep. I held my breath. I listened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. For the first time since Robert died, I felt something other than grief. Clarity. I realized I was alone in this house with a stranger who had the keys to my life. And my own son was too busy to listen. This is where the elder fraud begins. Not with a smash and grab, but with isolation. Maria started telling my friends I was too tired to visit. She told the neighbors I was confused and needed rest. Slowly, my world shrank to the size of this house. And within these walls, she was the queen. I started finding receipts in the trash that did not match our grocery bills. One receipt was for a jewelry store. Another was for an electronics shop. When I asked her, she said they were gifts for her sister. I did not push. I was afraid of what she might do if I pushed too hard. Leo became my ally without me even asking. He started spending more time in the living room while Maria was working. He would play games on his phone, but I saw his eyes watching her. One afternoon, I heard Leo whisper something that made my blood run cold. He was on the phone with a friend in his room. The door was ajar. He said, "She is stealing from her. I have to prove it." I stood in the hallway listening. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to burst in and hug him, but I stayed quiet. Because if Maria knew we were onto her, she would vanish. And I needed her to stay long enough to show her true face. The turning point came 3 weeks before Leo showed me the video. I received a letter from a lawyer I did not know. It was addressed to me but opened. It was sitting on the kitchen counter when I came down for breakfast. Maria was making coffee. She said, "Oh, that came yesterday. I forgot to give it to you. It is probably just junk mail." I picked it up. It was from a law firm specializing in guardianship. It mentioned a petition to declare me mentally incompetent. The name on the petition was David Vance. My son. My own son was trying to take control of my finances. And Maria was the witness listed for my mental state. I put the letter down slowly. My hands did not shake. I looked at Maria and said, "This looks important." She wiped the counter and said, "David is just worried. He wants to protect your assets, in case you forget things, in case you get sick." Her voice was so gentle, so reasonable. It was the voice of someone who had practiced this lie 1,000 times. I nodded and said, "Of course. He is a good son." I saw the relief in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought I was just another confused old woman who would sign whatever was put in front of her. But Robert used to say, paperwork matters, and I was about to make sure the paperwork told the truth. I told Leo everything that night. We sat on the back porch where the mosquitoes buzzed in the dark. The air was thick with the smell of cut grass and distant rain. I told him about the letter. I told him about the missing statements. I told him I was scared. It was the first time I had said those words out loud since Robert died. Admitting fear felt like admitting defeat. But Leo did not look at me with pity. He looked at me with a steady focus that reminded me so much of his grandfather. He did not cry. He did not get angry. He just nodded and said, "We will get them." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen lit up his young face in the darkness. He said I wanted to wait until we had enough. I asked him why he did not tell me sooner. He said I did not want you to be scared. I wanted to be sure. My grandson saved Grandma. That is the truth of it. I was ready to give up. He was ready to fight. He showed me the app on his phone. It connected to a small camera he had installed in the smoke detector in the hallway. It faced the study door. He had been recording for 2 weeks. The files were named by date and time. There were dozens of them. He said I checked them every night after you went to sleep. I asked him how he knew how to do all this. He said I learned it in computer club. He said I knew something was wrong when I saw her bring in that briefcase. I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked the wind out of me. Here was a child who saw the danger when I chose to look away. Here was a boy who took action when I chose to stay silent. For the first time in months, I did not feel alone. I felt like we were a team. I felt like Robert was watching from somewhere beyond the stars and finally smiling. We went inside to watch the first video. The kitchen light was dim. Leo plugged his phone into the small speaker on the counter. The audio was grainy but clear enough. The video showed the study door opening. Maria walked in. She looked over her shoulder to make sure the hallway was empty. She closed the door, but not all the way. She left it cracked just enough to slip through later. She went to the desk. She opened the drawer where I kept the checkbook. She took it out. She sat in my chair. She leaned forward and began to write. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was loud in the quiet room. She whispered to herself just enough for the microphone to catch. One more for the account. Then she put the check in her purse. We watched another video. She was on the phone with someone. The words drifted through the hallway speaker on Leo's phone. She said yes, the doctor will sign it. She thinks she is losing her mind. We turned off the phone. I sat in the dark and felt cold all the way to my bones. This was not just theft. This was a caregiver scam designed to erase me. The next morning, Maria came in as usual. She smelled of lavender and coffee. She smiled at me and asked how I slept. I said I slept fine. My voice did not shake. I looked at her hands. They were pouring milk into my cereal. They were steady. They were the hands of a professional. They were the hands of a thief. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the bowl across the room. But I remembered Robert's voice. Paperwork matters. Anger does not win cases. Evidence wins cases. I ate my cereal. I thanked her for the milk. I watched her walk away. She did not know that I knew. She did not know that the walls had ears. She thought she was hunting a rabbit. She did not realize the rabbit had set a trap. I knew I could not confront her alone. I needed proof that would hold up in court. I needed a lawyer who did not know David. I called an old friend of Robert's, an attorney named Mr. Henderson. He was retired, but still kept an office downtown on Asylum Street. I told him I needed to see him quietly. He agreed to meet me at a library across town. It was a neutral place. Maria would not suspect a library. I told Maria I was going to the doctor for a routine checkup. She offered to drive. I said no, Leo will take me. She hesitated. For a second, I saw the mask slip. Her eyes narrowed. Then she smiled and said, "Okay, be careful." That hesitation confirmed everything. She knew I was moving. She just did not know how far. Leo drove me to the library. His hands were tight on the wheel. He was only 14, but he drove like he was protecting a treasure. We parked in the back lot. Mr. Henderson was waiting for us near the biography section. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was white, and his shoulders were stooped, but his eyes were sharp. He listened to me without interrupting. He looked at the copies of the checks Leo had printed. He looked at the guardianship petition. He said, "This is criminal. This is not just civil. This is fraud." He told me we needed to set a trap. We needed her to admit it on record. We planned a meeting for the following Tuesday. I would tell Maria I was ready to sign the guardianship papers. I would invite David to come witness it. We would record the conversation. Mr. Henderson said, "Do not let them see you sweat. Act confused. Act tired. Give them what they want until the pen is in their hand." On the way home, Leo stopped the car around the corner from our house. He said, "Wait." He pointed out the window. Maria was standing in the driveway talking to a man. It was David. They were standing close together. Their heads were bent low. Leo rolled down the window just a crack. The wind carried their voices to us. David said, "Are you sure she suspects nothing?" Maria said she is clueless. She thinks I am her friend. She said the doctor appointment is tomorrow. We can get the signature then. David said, "Make sure she signs everything, not just the medical, the financial too." Maria laughed. It was a cold sound. She said, "Do not worry. By next week the house will be yours." They did not see us. They did not see the car idling in the shadow of the oak tree. I felt sick. My own son was standing in my driveway plotting my demise. He was selling my home before I was even gone. That small, unanswered question is where the truth begins. And now the answer was here. We waited until they finished. David got in his car and drove away. Maria went inside. Leo parked the car in the garage. We sat in the silence for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. I looked at my grandson. He was staring at the steering wheel. His jaw was set hard. I said, "Thank you, Leo." He looked at me. His eyes were wet, but he did not cry. He said, "I will not let them take you." I said, "I know." I put my hand on his shoulder. It was solid and strong. He was not a child anymore, not today. Today he was a man. Today he was my protector. We went into the house. Maria was in the kitchen washing dishes. She hummed a tune. It was cheerful. It was grotesque. She turned and smiled. She said, "How was the doctor?" I said, "Fine, just routine." She nodded. She dried her hands on a towel. She said, "Good, we have a big day tomorrow." I said, "Yes, we do." Something about the way I said those words made her pause, just for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled again. She thought it was confusion. She thought it was fear. She did not know it was resolve. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle. The floors creaked. The pipes groaned. Every sound felt like a warning. I thought about Robert. I thought about the life we built. I thought about the $2 million that was sitting in accounts she had accessed. $2 million. It was not just numbers. It was our security. It was Leo's college fund. It was the memory of 40 years of work. She was trying to steal our history. She was trying to erase us. I got out of bed. I walked to the window. The street was empty. A streetlight buzzed overhead. I whispered into the dark. I am still here. I am still here. The words felt like a promise. I went back to bed. I closed my eyes. I did not sleep, but I rested. I prepared myself for the performance of my life. I had to be weak so I could be strong. I had to lose the battle to win the war. The next morning came too fast. The sun rose grey and heavy. Rain threatened in the clouds. Maria dressed me in a blue sweater. She brushed my hair. She treated me like a doll. She said, "You look nice today. Ready for the big meeting?" I said, "Yes." My voice was soft. I shuffled my feet when I walked. I let my hand tremble when I reached for my coffee cup. I was acting. I was playing the part they had written for me. They wanted a confused old woman. I would give them one. But this old woman had claws. This old woman had a lawyer waiting in the wings. This old woman had a grandson with a recording device in his pocket. Maria did not see the change. She only saw what she wanted to see. She saw victory. She saw a payday. She saw an easy target. She did not see the storm coming. And that small detail would be her undoing. David arrived at 10 o'clock. He wore a suit. It was expensive. It was the suit he wore to funerals. He hugged me. His embrace was stiff. He smelled of cologne and anxiety. He said, "Mum, you look tired." I said, "I am just nervous." He said, "Do not be. It is all for your own good." He sat at the kitchen table. Maria sat next to him. They had papers spread out in front of them. The guardianship forms, the power of attorney, the bank transfer authorizations. It was all there. The entire plan laid out on my own kitchen table. Mr. Henderson was not here yet. He was waiting for my signal. Leo was in the living room pretending to play games. His phone was in his lap. The camera was on. I sat at the head of the table. I looked at my son. I looked at the woman who had stolen my life. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. Maria said, "Just sign there, Eleanor." And there. And there. I hovered the pen over the paper. My hand shook. Not from fear, from anticipation. Because what happened next changed everything I believed about family. I looked at David. I said, "Before I sign, I have one question." He looked up. He said, "What is it, Mum?" I said, "Do you love me?" The room went silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Maria shifted in her seat. She said, "Eleanor, do not be difficult. Just sign." David looked at me. His eyes were hard. He said, "Mum, this is not about love. This is about responsibility. You cannot manage anymore. I need to protect you." I said, "Protect me from what?" He said, "From yourself, from mistakes, from losing everything." I nodded slowly. I said, I see. I put the pen down. I said, I think I need to read this again. Maria stood up. Her patience was gone. Her voice was sharp. She said, there is nothing to read. We explained it. Sign the paper. She leaned over the table. Her face was close to mine. I saw the anger behind the mask. I saw the greed. I saw the end of her game. I smiled. I said, actually, Maria, I think we should wait for my lawyer. David froze. Maria froze. The air in the room turned to ice. Maria said, what lawyer? I said, the one who is about to walk through that door. And just then, the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang again. It was a sharp sound that cut through the tension in the kitchen. Maria stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. The sound was like a nail dragged down a chalkboard. David looked at me with confusion turning into anger. He said, what is this, Mum? I did not answer. I kept my hands folded on the table. They were still now. The trembling had stopped. The acting was over. Mr. Henderson walked in through the hallway. He was not alone. 2 police officers stood behind him in the doorway. They wore uniforms that looked dark and serious in the dim light of the kitchen. Maria took a step back. Her hand went to her throat. She said, who are these people? Mr. Henderson did not smile. He placed a briefcase on the table next to the papers. He said, I am Arthur Henderson. I represent Mrs. Vance, and these officers are here to discuss some discrepancies in your employment records. Maria looked at David. She said, do something. David stood up. He said, Mom, this is a joke. You are embarrassing yourself. I looked at my son. I felt a sadness so deep it felt like drowning. I said, no, David, this is not a joke. This is the end of your joke. The officer stepped forward. He said, Ms. Rodriguez, we have a warrant for your arrest. The air left the room. I heard someone gasp. It was me. I had not realized I was holding my breath. Maria laughed. It was a short, brittle sound. She said, arrest me for what? I have done nothing wrong. I have taken care of her. I have sacrificed 3 years of my life for this family. She pointed at me. Her finger was shaking. She said she is confused. She does not know what she is saying. David nodded quickly. He said, yes, Mum is not well. She needs help. She needs protection. Mr. Henderson opened his briefcase. He took out a folder. He said, we have recordings. We have bank statements. We have witnesses. He looked at Leo, who was standing in the doorway of the living room. Leo held up his phone. He said, I have everything. Maria's face went pale. It was like watching a mask dissolve. The kindness vanished. The warmth vanished. All that was left was cold calculation. She said, you little rat. She looked at Leo with pure hatred. I stood up. My legs were steady. I said, do not speak to him like that. She turned to me. She said, you ungrateful old woman. I gave you comfort. I gave you peace. I said, you gave me theft. You gave me betrayal. You gave me a plan to erase me. The officer moved closer. He said, Ms. Rodriguez, please turn around. She did not move. She looked at David. She said, tell them I was helping you. David looked at the floor. He said, I did not know about the videos. I thought she was just managing the bills. Maria spat on the floor. She said, "You are weak. You are all weak." She put her hands behind her back. The officer clicked the handcuffs. The sound was metallic and final. I watched them lead her out. She did not look back. She walked out of my house and out of my life. But the silence she left behind was heavier than her presence. David stayed standing at the table. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The suit hung loosely on his shoulders. He said, "Mom, I am sorry. I did not know she was stealing. I just wanted to secure the assets. I wanted to make sure you were okay." I looked at him. I saw the boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. I saw the man who had just tried to sign away my mind. I said, "You signed the petition, David. You signed the paper that said I was incompetent. You signed it without asking me. You signed it without checking." He said, "I trusted her. She said you were forgetting things. She said you were dangerous." I said, "And you believed her. You believed her over your own mother." He did not have an answer. He looked at his hands. They were empty. He said, "I was stressed. The divorce, the work. I just wanted it to be easy." I said, "Life is not easy, David. Trust is not easy. You broke something today. I do not know if it can be fixed." He looked up. His eyes were wet. He said, "Can I come back? Can we fix this?" I looked at the door where Maria had left. I looked at the papers on the table. I said, "No, not now. Maybe not ever. You need to understand what you did. You need to understand why it matters." He nodded slowly. He picked up his jacket. He said, "I will go. I will give you space." I said, "Yes, give me space." He walked to the door. He stopped and looked at Leo. He said, "Take care of her." Leo said, "I will." David left. The door closed. The house was quiet again, but this time the quiet was mine. Mr. Henderson stayed to help me secure the house. He changed the locks on the front door. He changed the codes on the alarm system. He called the bank and froze every account. He said, "We will recover most of the money. It will take time, it will take effort, but we will get it back." I nodded. I felt tired. The adrenaline was fading. The weight of the last 3 years was settling on my shoulders. Leo came and sat next to me. He put his head up on my shoulder. He said, "It is over, Grandma." I said, "Yes, it is over." Mr. Henderson packed his briefcase. He said, "I will be in touch tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do." I said, "Thank you, Arthur." He said Robert would be proud. "You handled this with class." He left. I was alone with Leo. I looked around the kitchen. It was a mess. The papers were scattered. The coffee was cold. The bread Maria had baked sat on the counter. It looked like evidence now. I said, "Let us clean this up." Leo said, "I will do it." I said, "No, we will do it together." We started to pick up the papers. We sorted them into piles. The lies went in the trash. The truth went in the folder. We worked in silence. It was a comfortable silence. It was the silence of survival. That night I slept for 10 hours. I did not dream. When I woke up, the sun was shining on the red brick outside. The shutters looked bright against the blue sky. I made coffee. I sat at the table. Leo was asleep upstairs. The house felt different. It felt like my house again. The shadows were gone. The air felt lighter. I walked into the study. The painting of the lighthouse was straight on the wall. I moved it aside. The safe was there. I turned the dial. It opened with a click. Inside there was nothing but old documents. Robert's birth certificate, my marriage license, Leo's baby bracelet. Nothing was missing. I took the documents out. I held them in my hands. They were just paper, but they were our history. They were proof that we existed, that we had built something, that we mattered. I put them back. I locked the safe. I moved the painting back. It was done. The secret was safe. The house was secure. I walked back to the kitchen. I poured myself a cup of coffee. I sat down. I waited for Leo to wake up. I waited for the next chapter of my life to begin. And for the first time in 5 years, I was not afraid of what came next. The weeks that followed were busy. There were meetings with the police. There were meetings with the bank. There were meetings with the agency that sent Maria. They offered a settlement. They admitted negligence. They paid a sum of money. It was not everything, but it was enough. David did not call for a month. Then he sent a letter. It was handwritten. He said he was going to therapy. He said he was trying to understand why he let fear drive him. He said he hoped one day I could forgive him. I put the letter in the drawer. I did not throw it away. I did not answer it. Forgiveness is not a transaction. It is not something you give because someone asks. It is something you give when you are ready. I was not ready. Maybe I never would be. But I wished him well. I wished him find his own strength. I wished he learn to stand on his own feet. I learned that lesson from Robert. Helping someone stand up is good. But if you carry them too long, they may forget how to walk. I had carried David too long. I had carried Maria too long. No more. I was done carrying. I was done saving people who did not want to be saved. Leo grew taller that summer. He turned 15 in August. We had a small cake, just the two of us. He asked for a new laptop. I bought it for him. He said, "Thank you, Grandma." I said, "You earned it. You saved me." He said, "We saved each other." He was right. I gave him a home. He gave me my life back. We sat on the porch in the evenings. We watched the neighbors walk their dogs. We watched the cars drive by on Willow Creek Drive. Life went on. It was quieter now. It was simpler. I started gardening again. I planted new flowers where the hydrangeas had died. I pulled the weeds. I dug in the dirt. My hands got strong again. I remembered the feeling of soil under my fingernails. It felt real. It felt honest. Work was good for the soul. Robert used to say that too. He said work keeps the rust off. I believed him now. I believed him more than ever. I was not just surviving. I was living. I was building something new from the ruins of the old. And it was strong, because this time, I built it with my own hands. This time, I checked the locks. This time, I read the paperwork. I tell you this story not to make you afraid of caregivers. There are many good people in this world. There are many kind hands. But I tell you this so you know that you must watch. You must pay attention. You must not let age make you invisible. You are still here. You still matter. Your voice still has power. Use it. Do not let anyone tell you that you are too old to understand. Do not let anyone tell you that you are too tired to decide. You are the captain of your own ship, even in the storm, especially in the storm. There are people who will smile while they take from you. There are family members who will choose money over love. You must protect yourself. Check your statements. Talk to your children. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not let them write your story for you. Write it yourself, even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks. Write it anyway, because it is your life, and no one else has the right to live it for you. If you are watching this and you feel alone, know that you are not. There are people who care. There are people who will stand with you, like Leo stood with me. Be that person for someone else. Check on your neighbours, call your parents. Listen to the elders in your life. They have stories, they have wisdom, and they have rights that must be defended. The world tries to push us aside, but we are still standing. We are still here. We are still strong. Thank you for listening to my story. It was not easy to tell, but secrets lose their power when you speak them into the light. I hope you never have to face a betrayal like this. But if you do, remember Eleanor on Willow Creek Drive. Remember that you can fight back. Remember that you are worth fighting for. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. Like the video and subscribe. I am reading every comment, and I am listening. Robert used to say, paperwork matters. He was right, but love matters more, and dignity matters most. Keep your dignity, keep your love, and keep your eyes open. I will be here, watching, listening, living. And I will see you in the next story. Good night.